I'm moving my laptop.
All right. Here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. And Pete
Well, good
wasn't
morning,
quite
Bill.
ready. He was moving his
Wow.
computer and still talking to me.
Just little things like this laptop.
Yeah, exactly. Episode number 254 we're recording today. 254.
Man.
The name of it is SLOT. Sandwich, lease option, transfer. Transactions fully summarized.
Wait, fully summarized.
Summarized.
Okay, the fully. Not partially summarized, fully summarized.
Fully summarized, exactly.
Okay.
Who wins the fight when getting real estate sellers to sign a purchase and sales contract or a real estate option to buy agreement? In this single podcast, you will see clearly in your mind why wholesaling is completely dead, why option agreements are a real estate entrepreneur's best friend, why you would do slot deals, and the major benefit it brings to the seller, the buyer, and you, the entrepreneur. I know this podcast is number 254, but really should be number 1. The reason why is because this podcast is the first of a sequence of 7. I have just recently done a survey to find it is needed and wanted, and I do sort of like summaries of each of our 7 deal strategies to acquire real estate creatively without capital, risk, and a long educational runway. In other words, a shortcut to success as a real estate entrepreneur. So let's say the next 7 podcasts are going to be your prerequisite to making real estate investing work for you. Without all the hard work and expense. More to the point, footnotes from my 20 years experience in hundreds of deal transactions.
I say amen to that.
Okay.
Hear, hear.
All right, Pete. I want to make sure our listeners understand the game plan. As I have already mentioned in this description of the podcast, which I just read to you, we will be doing a series of 7 shows that will summarize each of my core real estate strategies. And each of these summaries will include what the strategy is, why you should use it, and the major benefit to the seller, the buyer, and you, the investor, or as we call them, the entrepreneur. We don't like to use the word investor because investor has the connotation that you had the money, it's your money, and investors' only mantra or the only thing that they want is rate of return for their money. So they want to put their little soldiers into the battle and know that they're winning. Right?
Yeah.
So investor has this connotation that you have the money and that you have the big bucks and that you are the person that's looking to invest.
The ultimate capitalist.
Yeah, exactly. And when in most cases we don't have the money, we use other people's money. We use banks, and we use hard money lenders, and we use private lenders, and of course the buyer's money. A lot of times we don't use our own money. Even if you have a lot of money, you shouldn't use your own money. Because if you can't buy and sell real estate without money, it's going to be real difficult to do it with money. Now, you'll buy it, but you won't make the profits that we make. And you won't make the transactions that we make. So it's better off to not use the word investor, because the first thing a seller thinks when they hear investor is you're going to give them a low price. And right away, as soon as you use the word investor, the seller goes on defense.
Yeah.
and you have to like really work hard to get them out of that defense mode, and like they put like this brick overcoat around them, like this you can't get me, you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
they don't really help you. It's really hard when you do that. So we use the words real estate entrepreneur, because really think about it. What does an entrepreneur do? They put together all the resources. So, I know I have the ability to find money. I have the ability to find sellers, find buyers, find money. That's all I do these days. Plus, I have contractors, I have lawyers, I have closing agents, insurance people, roofing guys, and you name it, grass guys and plow guys, and because we're constantly swapping names around, I'm constantly
Hmm.
looking for somebody to do something, right? So the
Hmm.
entrepreneur puts them all together to make the transaction work,
Yeah.
right? So that's why we use the word entrepreneur. So I want to clarify what I will not be doing today, or in these series of 7, is the deal structuring math.
Okay.
Okay. I have free videos that are short and explain all these. If you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/deal making 101. So it's flippinghouses4rookies.com, deal making 101. And there you can, we used to sell the course, but I don't sell it anymore. So there you can just log in, and every one of the deals, everything you need is right there. Okay. So it will explain the loan to value ratios. It'll explain, how to explain creative real estate deals to your seller. It shows the math for each one of the 7 deals that we're going to cover. It's going to do all that. So I don't want to reiterate that on the podcast. So basically, going over it again, we're going to talk about why you would want to use each strategy. First of all, what is the strategy? What is it? And then why you want to use it, and what are the benefits? And that's all we're going to cover.
Well, would you cover when to use it, or is that in the other videos?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, why you would use it would tell you when to use it.
Okay.
So if you have the reason, if you know the reason why, then you'll figure out when to use it.
Yeah, I asked because I know when I first learned it and other people first learn it, it seems like it's like new things. You didn't realize there's a number of ways you can purchase a property. Then you're juggling in your head, well, when would I use this? Why? So it's really helpful to have these as options.
Right.
Not to use the word option, but also to know why and then when.
Choices.
So
We use the word
choices. Choices. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay.
So I just wrote Sean a sales letter while I was on vacation. I was actually away at Hilton Head for a week, and you would think I was on vacation, but I wrote a 6,000 word sales letter for Sean for a new course that we're coming out with, and then I wrote a book, a 15,000 page book, a 15,000 word book. Anyways, writing the sales letter, I put in the sales letter 10 things I think of while making an offer.
Boy, that's going to be important. 10 things out of your head. That's valuable, if not scary.
Yeah, totally. So once we get done with this series, then we'll talk about those 10 things. I don't think we'll do them all in one podcast, but we'll probably do a series of those. So hopefully that will help. Right.
Yeah.
And it's theory. It's not numbers. It's like questions and things I would ask, and I want to know before I can make an offer.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Yep. The slot deal. Excuse me. What is it? So what most don't know is the most obvious secret in plain sight in real estate. So what is the most obvious secret in plain sight in real estate? And that's called an option.
Right? Okay. Yeah.
I plan to cover this in full detail in podcast number 255, which is next week, because the next is today we're doing a slot deal, which is a sandwich lease option transfer. And then next week is just the option. So I plan to cover this in detail. Excuse me. Got something going on there. But for today, I just want you to understand this. When you agree with a seller or a buyer on a price, the amount of time, and sometimes payments in advance verbally, that's not good enough because people change their mind.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to use an option to purchase agreement to put in writing and legalize it so it's hard to have someone change their mind later. Right? Good morning,
Yeah.
Desiree.
Makes sense.
So here, if there's a pecking order or a hierarchy, if you would, it would go like this. Okay. It would go verbal offer, like communicate, handshake agreement. Then it would go letter of intent. Then it would go option agreement. Then it would go purchase and sales agreement. And then it would go into a deed.
Good.
Right? So if there was a pecking order, that's what it would be. I'll do that again. So you would do verbal agreement or handshake. Then you would do letter of intent. Then you would do an option agreement. Then you would do a purchase and sales agreement. And then you would do a deed. Now, because options are not very well known, it usually goes in the realtor world, some sort of a handshake or verbal agreement, purchase and sales agreement to the deed. They've kind of shortcutted it.
That's right. Yeah, I just went through that. So that's it, right to the point.
Yeah. So I know that this is probably hard for some people that can. Well, I'm going to keep going because I'll add that in later. So when you agree with the seller or your buyer on price, amount of time, and sometimes payments in advance, verbally, you use the option purchase agreement to put it in writing and legalize it so it's hard to have someone change their mind later. So basically, this option to buy gives the optionee, which is you. So the optionor is the person giving it. The optionee is the person receiving it. So basically, basically this option to buy gives the optionee, you, the rights to sell the named property without having to actually buy it. So you're not buying the property, you're buying rights to sell the property. Okay. So in the online business or on the internet, okay, this is called an affiliate. Right? So what happens is somebody like me has courses to sell, and I give somebody the affiliate rights to sell it, and I give them a commission.
Right. Yeah, I've seen those.
I own the product, and my affiliate sells it to his crowd or his congregation, and I give them access and a commission for doing that. So let's say it's kind of common that it would be like, let's say I sell $100 course, right? My affiliate gets an affiliate link, which is specific to him or her. And when they sell it, I give them a 30% commission. So that means every time he or she sells $100 course, they get $30. And they have a specific link that does that automatically. It's all automated, right? This is not much different than what we're doing with real estate. We're like technically an affiliate, right?
Yeah.
Now here's the interesting thing, right? What's interesting is you can have an option agreement with a seller, and the seller could still have a listing with a realtor. Now, the realtors are much more touchy about this than we are. So the seller needs to inform the realtor that they have an exclusive agreement with us, meaning the option agreement. So what that means is that the realtor, which it's getting harder and harder to do because they're not allowing this. I've seen a few contracts, at least recently, that really attack this concept. Wow. So what it means is that if you're selling a piece of property and I have an option agreement with you, right? Meaning I have the rights to sell it. And then the realtor has a contract with you as well. It's basically a race to the finish line. Like who can get you a buyer first and into contract, right?
Yeah.
So, and we're going to talk about this next week, but the point that I'm trying to make here is that if I sell the property before the realtor, then the realtor has to exclude their commission because the realtor didn't find the buyer. I did.
Right.
And that's a confusion with realtors that I wish I could fix someday. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the only purpose of a realtor is to go find a buyer. They're not a consultant. They're not designed to. Their system is not made to have them hold your hand and consult you through the whole process. Though the ones that sell 20 houses or more a year have figured that out. That's what they do. They hold everybody's hands, the buyers, the sellers, because that's how they get their commissions.
Yeah.
But technically, the real purpose of a realtor is to go find you a buyer. So if they don't find you a buyer and I find you the buyer, then technically they're not entitled to the commission.
It sounds like, yeah, it does. It sounds like you'd want to have the option in place with a seller before a realtor showed up, not after. Sounds very slim pickings that you would show up after a realtor has it. Hey, I'll give you an option. And like, nope.
Yeah. So if they have a listing already, that's a good point, Peter. If they have a listing already, you aren't going to do an option with them. They aren't going to change their listing. They're going to pretty much tell you, go pound salt, take a hike, whatever they're going to tell you, right?
Yeah.
As my father used to say, very English, get bent.
Oh God.
Yeah, he's very English. Believe me, I just went through a week full of this because I was with my wife's family for a week in Hilton Head, and all I heard about was my dry English humor. They pounced on me heavily for that one. All right. So here's what happens. You decide that you have this verbal agreement and you're going to go into writing with it. And we're going to use an option to purchase agreement to make it legal. You have to use consideration. That's legal term for paper money.
Money.
No, not money.
Paper money. Wow.
Yeah, it's paper money. It's not money, it's paper money. So it has to be at least $1.
So you're saying it can't be like change, like metal money?
Right.
Wow.
Otherwise it's not legal.
Jeez, you think actual gold or something would be better, but all right, whatever they say, that's fine.
So I'm not going to get into this either, but if you actually look at the laws, all of our contracts we write nowadays are against the law anyways, because you're supposed to write contracts in capital letters. And that makes it legal. Yeah. I went through that with a coaching client. It makes it legal. Yeah. When you don't use all capital letters. In fact, I think we had Nick, what is his name?
Nick Sadati?
Yeah. We had some of his documents and noticed they were all in capital letters.
Well, I noticed you write usually in capital letters. I thought that was just a thing you did, but there's a reason.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I learned it afterwards. I started to write that way because it was neater for me because I couldn't do cursive. Yeah. But in a contract, it's technically supposed to be. Anyways, that's not why we're here.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So you pay this nominal fee. I use 100 just because it seems more apropos, but you can use $1. Here's the point. If you don't give the paper money as consideration, legal tender, they call it, the document isn't consummated as legal. Okay. So I used to give cash. Nowadays I give a check because then there's a paper trail.
Right. That's better.
Okay. But what it does is it allows me to buy these rights, which I'm going to cover next week. Okay. Because I'm buying these rights with the option agreement, it also gives me a very, very, very small equity share in the property. Right? So the law doesn't read a percentage of equity share. It just says if you are a owner of a piece of property, you can sell it on your own and not need a realtor license.
Mm.
So this is one of those areas where, because I have an equity share in the property, I now become part owner.
Mm.
So when I give this $100 and I write this option agreement, I'm getting an equity share in the property, which means I can go sell it for the seller as a part owner. I'm not a controlling owner, but I'm a part owner of the property, and I can go off and sell this property and collect fees and do everything a realtor can do without having to have a license.
Hmm.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So here is the bombshell of my life, of my professional real estate life. And when you fully understand this and you fully apply this every day in every deal, you will be very successful. Nelson Rockefeller once said the best way to build wealth is to own nothing and control everything. When we do these option agreements the way we're talking about it, that's exactly what we're doing. We don't own the property, but we control it. Which, by the way, we can sign an option agreement for 90 days. I wouldn't do it less than 90 days. Or 90 months.
Mm-hmm.
There is no criteria on how long you can have an option for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if you listen to what Nelson Rockefeller said, I don't know. I've tried to figure out the years. There's different years when they say he said it, but it doesn't matter the year. It was, back in the day. The way to build wealth is to own nothing, control everything. Now, if you have the pleasure of knowing some elitist people, which I do, I have a couple friends that are very wealthy, and they're friends of mine. And one thing that we recently talked about a couple months ago, which is what makes me think about this, elitist or the high income earners or people with a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Have a lot of money because they know how to protect it. So that's what Nelson Rockefeller is saying is the way you build wealth isn't make money. It's when you make it, you keep it.
Yeah.
Because you don't risk it.
Well, it's hard to risk something that you don't actually own, but if you can control it and make money from it and not have the responsibility of being liable, you're much safer.
Right. So Nelson Rockefeller, what he's saying there is in his portfolio, he has businesses and trusts and all that kind of stuff that owns the assets.
Mm.
And then he controls it all. So he doesn't need to own the assets. So, by the way, and we could do a whole podcast on this, when you don't own assets, what don't you pay?
Taxes?
That's right. So when we hear on the news the Democrats complaining all the time about how the big guys should pay taxes and all these big guys, no, they're corporations.
Mm.
Now the corporations will have to pay taxes. That's another story. But what happens is these big money guys don't have the money in their name. They don't pay taxes. Why is Donald Trump supposedly not pay taxes, which I don't believe, but because he doesn't own anything. He controls it all.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't own it all. He controls it all. Which, by the way, if you know anything about Donald Trump, which is not hard to figure out these days, the way I believe he makes his money is with royalties on his name. He doesn't build the building to own the building. Everybody else owns the building. What he owns is the royalty rights with his name on top of it. That's how he makes all his money. He gets royalties for having the Trump name on top of the building. Why do you think all of his buildings have his name on it? Because he's charging royalty rights.
Well, it's a brand.
By the way,
it's a brand.
I was just going to say, which, by the way, his brand brings 3, 4, 5, whatever times rent in that building than they could get any other way.
Yeah.
right?
Well, branding's important. I just bought a CD player the other day. I was looking for a Sony. I couldn't find a Sony. I had to go to Shmush Mush, some weird thing. And I would have
Right.
paid more if it said Sony because I trust it. But it was all
Right.
random stuff. But, a brand that you can trust, you feel comfortable enough to pay extra. The status, the security, guarantee, whatever it is.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
This mush mush CD, is this for mush cookie snowflakes?
No, it had just about a weird name, the Folgar. It just had these random weird names. You might as well call it Bing Bong,
There's that
like
bad
apps.
English.
Yeah, see? Oh,
Bad
I'm sorry.
English humor.
Was that fun? That's supposed to be funny? Sorry.
All right, we're gonna move on. Now watch this or
Move
hear
on.
this, Peter.
Yeah.
We're buying the rights to control this property for $100 very often.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, if we don't perform by finding our buyer, all we risked was the non-refundable $100 fee. This isn't. There's no other ramifications. This isn't secret.
Mm.
Thus, there's no risk. Now, if you're worried about risking $100, then use 10. Right? So, in essence, what's really happening is we're buying this agreement for $100 from our seller. Then we're selling it to our end user buyer. And an end user buyer is the person who will use the property or live in the property or pay rent on the property or end up buying the property. The end user is the one that's going to use the property.
Yeah.
For a much higher number. So I could buy an option agreement for $100 and then go sublease this property. So all the obligations and all the things I told the seller I was going to do isn't going to be me. It's going to be my end user. Because I'm going to assign all of those promises that I made the seller to my buyer. And the buyer, who is going to be a rent-to-own person, which, by the way, pre-COVID, 81% of all the population looking for real estate don't qualify.
Interesting. Pre-COVID, do we have any new number?
No, I've been looking for it and I can't find it.
It's going to be worse, though, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know how the banks are going to deal with people that didn't have income for 8 or 10 months. I don't know how they're going to deal with that, but that's not my wheelhouse. So,
yeah.
So anyways, here's my point. We're buying this option document for $100 and we're selling it to our buyer for $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. I mean, think of it, Peter. If you have a low credit score and your wife wants your kid to be in some school system, or you're living in a kind of a raunchy apartment, or you're dealing with a rough landlord, or you're living with your in-laws, or whatever it may be, you're not comfortable, and your wife is constantly like we gotta get the kids into school, or there's arguing going on between her and your mom, all these things, the neighbor, the kids are getting in a bad crowd. There's all these things that poke a family to want to move. And then all of a sudden, one day you see an ad that says house for sale, no bank qualifying. You're going to be like, what?
Right, because these are the folks that just can't get the mortgage for some reason. It doesn't have to be terrible, but they just don't qualify in some way. So, well, I've seen it happen. One of the houses, they're freaking out, like, wait a minute, we can buy this? Yeah, right. Honey, they're screaming like, sweetheart, come here, we can buy this. Like, what? We can't buy this. Right. They go crazy because they don't know about it. You're doing them a big favor.
Let me ask you this question, and this is not exactly how it happens, but to get the theory wrapped around your head, would that person pay $3,000, $5,000, sometimes $10,000 to have that opportunity to move out of that location, wherever their kids are, they're not happy with, and have a house they can call their own?
Yeah,
you bet your booty they would.
You bet they would, because I realized something recently that what you pay for something isn't just what the physical value is. My son could not find a house and he had to move into an apartment and they don't like it, but there was hardly anything available. They had to pay more and they just don't like it. And I swear to God, if we can get them a house and it costs $3, $5, or $10,000, he would totally pay it just to get out of this thing. So when you're in that kind of situation, it isn't just what's it worth. You're not buying pancakes or a toaster. You're buying peace of mind, a house, your lifestyle. So for these folks, that few $1,000s is or they're going to be renting for another year, 2, 3, or forever. They'll never get out of the trap.
Right.
It's a fabulous opportunity for people in this
I'll
situation.
never forget, you were probably about, I'm guessing at this point, probably about a year into working with you. And we were actually doing a podcast, I think, and we used to sit with one another before, after the podcast and go over business. And I remember you being lit up like a Christmas tree, bright as bright could be, because you had this realization that we're always talking about motivated sellers, and you realize that there's motivated buyers too. It's on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, because the first thing people ask, when I've seen you explain this in meetings and things, people go, why would somebody do that? Why would they pay more for the house? What are you, crazy? Who would do that? Duh. People in this situation have a situation they're trying to dig out of. So it works out good for them, and it's not a bad thing. You're helping them, but there's a price to helping someone.
Yeah.
And, if we don't do this, nobody would. They're stuck. The seller might be stuck, and everybody's stuck. So we provide a good service that's worth it in the right situation. It's just the right situation for the right people. It works great. That's all. Where does this fit? Right. To where it fits.
Right. So you're not gonna, when you do some of those dating shows, they're not gonna match make somebody. That's why there's all the questions, and you're not gonna just plop two people together. No, you're gonna want to make sure they have things in common and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
All right. So we're not buying the house. We're actually buying the rights to sell the house. And in a slot deal, we're assigning those rights to our buyer for a fee. So we're not really in the real estate business. We're really in the marketing and contract business.
It's a service of some. It's a service business in that regard.
So now, once we get this property, the seller tells us, "Okay, I'm willing to do this." We're going to put this thing on Flakebook on Marketplace, right? And all we're going to do is because I get this question a lot, like, how are you going to find these buyers? Well, just put it on Facebook Marketplace or Zillow, the rental section, not the house selling section, the rental section, and just put house for sale, no bank qualifying, with some good pictures and a phone number with a free recorded message with you explaining it's a 2-bedroom, a 5-bedroom. It's got 14 helicopter pads and 13 swimming pools and 16 tennis courts or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So once you do that, you'll find a buyer willing to pay you the $3,000, the $5,000, the $10,000 or more.
You're joking about the helicopter and swimming pools, but this can apply to larger estates where somebody might have trouble selling it, but you might have somebody having trouble buying because of maybe a short-term situation they're in. Rich people go up and down too. They find themselves in a pickle. Right.
So to your point, I deal with first-time home buyers. So my depending on what city I'm in, I buy 150,000. I sell $150,000 houses. I just bought a $400,000 house, which I'm a little bit nervous about, but it's in a $400,000 city. So that's like their starter home.
Yeah.
But here's my point. The deposit money, the non-refundable option consideration deposit money that you're going to take from the buyer, I tend to run around 3 to 5% because I want to have that much money when I go get them an FHA mortgage, because that's what FHA requires.
Right, because that counts as their down payment. That's their down payment in essence.
We're kind of sidetracked here, and we're going to run a little bit late today. So the point, that's right. The point that I want to make here is when you get above the FHA requirement. So in other words, FHA has a requirement or a maximum amount that they will lend in any area. So let's say your area is $400,000. FHA won't lend above that. It's called a jumbo loan.
After that, the bigger ones.
At that point, you need 20% down.
Mm.
So now you get into an $800,000 house. They need to put 20% down. So if they give you 10% down, they're ahead, and they're going to be all over that.
Yeah.
So 10% of 800,000 is 80,000.
That's right. And those are possible too.
Deposit. So you do one of those a year. That's all you need is one of those a year. You could live.
Crazy.
Right. So the bigger numbers are better for slot deals. Okay? Now let's get moving because we only have about 10 minutes left, and I have probably about 20 minutes worth of shit here. So the biggest thing you should know, and so let's talk about why you would use this transaction.
Okay.
So the first part of it, and the reason why I took a little longer today is because I had to explain the option stuff. Right. So normally I wouldn't need all that time, but I had to explain that. So now let's talk about why you would use this transaction or this type of deal structure. The biggest thing you should know is each deal you analyze should bounce up against this formula, which is where's the money or the profit now? Where or how much is the money or profit monthly? And where is or how much is the money or profit later? And later is often known as the equity. Now, this, as far as I'm concerned, I came up with this some time ago, and you've heard me say this. When you do this formula, which is usually at the end of the deal, by the way, and this book that I was talking about, the name of this new book is Breaking the Real Estate Monopoly. Is the name of it. And really what I have done is I've laid out a flow chart or a step-by-step process on how we do creative deals and when you say and how you do it. You and I, we covered it on episode number 248. So if you want to hear it, go back to 248. It's all there, right? But I wrote a book on it that explains it a little bit more. My point in telling you that is that once that formula is done on the deal meeting step, which is the last step. The reason why is it's a qualification point to make sure you're not entering into something you shouldn't be entering into. But more importantly, up until the deal hunting step, which is, the deal meeting step, which is where you start putting things in writing and start consummating the deal. You're just doing discovery and due diligence and stuff like that, which should not take you very much time, right? Once you do this formula, money now, money monthly, money later, you're going to realize where's the money and how much time you and resources you can put into this deal. On a slot deal, it's just money now. You're going to get your $3,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 and you're going to go because you're going to find a tenant buyer and you're going to give them to the seller with all the paperwork, qualified background checks and everything done. And you're just going to get your $3,000. This doesn't mean you should work on this deal for 6 months. It should be like 10 hours.
Right.
Okay. Now, if we're going to do like I'm doing a deal right now that the house is worth $410 and I paid $235, can I afford to spend some time on that deal?
Oh, hell yeah.
Right. You see what I'm saying? Because there's money now, money monthly, money later, or there's a lot of money now and no money. See what I'm saying? So,
you have those three factors to juggle as long as something's good is coming, not someday. You want it kind of soon, but someday is good too.
Right. So, yeah, that's good. That's a good point. Someday is good as long as it can sustain itself. Because I've seen too many investors that will go negative cash flow with the promise to appear on the profit 10 years down the road.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. You know what's going to happen this month, maybe next month. So
now I'm completely diverting and I shouldn't, but hear me loudly at the top of the steeple right now, shouting as loud as I can. And I've been saying it for a year, Peter. So Desiree, that was not a subject to deal. I used a private lender and bought that property for $235. Actually, I used 3 private lenders and put that money together. because I could, because it's such a big fat deal. The one before it, Desiree, that I bought for 200 and sold for 280 was subject to. Okay, so anyways, I just realized I didn't do my stuff in the beginning of the show here. So the reason who I'm talking to is Desiree. Every Thursday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we record this, and she is on. We live stream it to Facebook and YouTube, and she's on Facebook asking questions. You can do that every week if you want, or YouTube. I've been preaching for a year or more, at least a year, that you should find every transaction you can get your hands on subject to private lenders. You should get as much debt as humanly possible right now. And I'm talking about debt for assets. I'm not talking about go buy new cars and furniture and stuff that doesn't bring you money back. And here is the reason why. There's no way that this civilization could pump $5 trillion into it, tell everybody to stay home and build no products. That's what makes inflation. We have too much money, not enough products. Proof of that is there's one house for sale and you got 20 buyers. It raises the price of the house. That's inflation. Right? So sure enough, I start reading recently, this is May of 2021 we're in, right?
Yeah.
In April, the used car market nationally in April went up 21% in April. That's inflation, man. It's going to happen. So the reason why I'm telling people to have all this debt, and I'm completely diverting here, is because if you're paying $1,200 a month for a mortgage now, what's going to happen in a year from now when everybody else has to pay $1,800 for the same mortgage because of inflation? That's how you're going to make money. You're going to make a shit ton of money that way. Okay?
Yep.
All right. So going back to the slot deal, when the seller has no equity, right, or he's not willing to let you have equity in the deal, you use a slot deal. That's the only time you use a slot deal. In other words, you have to give the deal is forcing you some way or another to give the full asking price, regardless if it's a debt problem or if it's a stubborn seller. The point is that you have to pay full asking price. Okay.
Yeah.
So normally I preach, don't buy real estate unless you have equity in it the night you close. Well, in this particular case, the slot deal is not that way. That we're going to create that equity, right? So here's why I say this: that you're gonna. The only time you use a slot deal is when you have to pay full asking price, or very close to it.
Yeah.
Or over the full asking price. Here's why. If the seller owes $100,000, okay, or is stuck on selling for $100,000 and won't sell for less, the property's worth $100,000. You can promise to pay that, because what you're going to do is go sell the property for, say, $105,000. So, like we talk about all the time, if I were to sell you my computer today for $1,000 and you paid $1,000 in cash, you paid $1,000. But if you swiped your credit card and paid for it over 2 years, 24 months, you paid more than $1,000. Well, our buyers are like that. They have to swipe their credit card because they can't pay cash today. They don't have the $1,000 today. They have to finance it. So by virtue, they'll pay the $105,000.
Yep. And they'll be glad they did. They're not resentful, because otherwise you're going to be renting forever.
Right.
So it's worth it to get out of the trap.
Right. So you go market this property at $105,000. You find your buyer and they ask you how much do they have to put down. You say $5,000. So if you sold for $105,000 and they put down $5,000, right? How much do they owe? $100,000. Well, how much do you owe the seller? The $100,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Which brings us to the last point. So is that clear what we just did? So we're transferring. So we got an option agreement and we're assigning it or transferring it to our buyer for a fee, which is the $5,000 in this case.
Yeah.
Okay. So John says, I know you hate banks. Wouldn't you use a HELOC? I could do that, John. My problem is I buy so much property that I don't want to have. Well, Ron LeGrand taught me a long time ago. The only way that you get in trouble with real estate is to put the loans in your name. So when there's a problem, they come back and get you. So I try not to put. I mean, obviously with private lenders and stuff like that, I do that, but it's nominal. It's for the right formulas. So I probably wouldn't go get a HELOC just because I don't want to have that debt in my name. Okay. Here we go. So now we're at a point where, so now we know what it is and we know why we're going to do the deal, right? Mm-hmm. Now what we're going to do is cover the benefits. Cool. So I'm going to read through these because we're already 45 minutes in and I want to kind of close the podcast down.
Sure.
Okay. So here we go. So benefits of doing this transaction, mostly for the seller, actually for both. The seller sells a house often that they're stuck with because they owe too much. Or they're too stubborn to take less for an asking price.
Yep.
Plus, the seller drastically reduces his or her closing cost of the 12 to 15% that we talk about all the time because they don't have to pay that now. Again, if you want more information on this, go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/dealmaking101, and I give you all the details and all the math there and how all this works. So if you're wondering what the 12 to 15% is, just go there. I explain it all there. We don't have enough time to do that today. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the seller sells a house they normally couldn't sell on a rent to own. So a lot of the people we talk to are accidental landlords. They're renting because this happened to them organically already anyways.
Yeah.
They moved on, they have another mortgage, and they don't want to be stuck with this payment, so they rent it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're accidental landlords. Because this buyer will agree to rent and do all the maintenance, repairs, grass, snow, etc., the seller has no landlord obligations. The buyer is taking on all the landlord obligations, or we're taking it on and assigning it to the buyer, right? So the seller actually becomes the bank for all intents and purposes, with a minimum of a 2-year period, while the buyer gets qualified for a loan. So there's a 2-year delayed cash out in a slot deal. But the benefit is that the buyer gets to use the house and pay all the maintenance like they own it.
Mm-hmm.
And the seller has none of those obligations, becomes the bank, and just has to wait 2 years to save the 12 or 15% in closing costs and not have to come out of their pocket with money because they owe more than what it's worth.
Right. They're not making any money on this deal anyway, right?
Right.
There's nothing to make. So if they have to wait a couple of years to not get stuck with losing 10, 20, 12, 15, 20 grand, that's not bad.
Right. They're doing it already anyways. They're already renting it out. Now at least there's a light at the end of the tunnel that they're going to get cashed out.
You got to do something.
All right. So number 2, here's another one. The buyer obviously benefits because they get to buy a house they normally wouldn't be able to buy. So the seller's benefit is they sell a house they are having trouble selling. And then number 2, the buyer gets to buy a house they normally wouldn't be able to buy. Number 3. And finally, our investor or entrepreneur benefits because he or she needs little education to do all this. Right? Because it's not hard to go find somebody, sign a lease with them, and then sublease it. It's really not hard. I promise. Okay. So here are the benefits to you, my investor listener right now, or as we call it, the real estate entrepreneur. Here's a list of benefits to you. Okay. So number 1, be a matchmaker by finding sellers that will do this when buyers that will do it too. So all you need to do is, you don't need to know a bunch about real estate, deal structuring, all that kind of stuff. What you need to know is how to get on Facebook or how to get on Zillow, and just put in there, would you be willing to rent for a year or two and then sell it to me? The difference between me and you, Peter, or the difference between me and my students listening right now, or listeners right now, is obviously I have a lot of experience with conversions. So maybe I need to talk to 10 people to buy a house. Maybe you need to talk to 50 because you got more training. Maybe some of the listeners have no training and have to talk to 100. So it's not a matter of talent, it's a matter of stamina.
Right, because you're not convincing somebody to do this. You're finding a person in the precarious situation where he doesn't know how to get out of this situation, doesn't know what to do. And you come along and say, you could do this, and he's surprised and relieved, but you got to find that guy.
Right. And you bring up the point, because the formula is find a motivated seller, tell them what you do, ask them what's needed and wanted, and then give it to them. That's the successful formula, right?
That's so fine, not convince.
Right, exactly. All right, so the other benefit is the entrepreneur can specialize in these transactions and earn from deals most investors throw in the trash. Most investors don't do this because they're trying to sell for what it's worth. And most investors don't know how to make money off of these deals.
Yeah, right? Well, there's no equity. You think you can't make any money on it.
Right. They don't know how to create the equity. All right. So another one is it is much easier to offer a full asking price to a seller than what wholesalers do trying to buy a 40 to 60% discount from market value. Yeah. So if you're a wholesaler and you're listening and you listen to, I don't know, Dan Merrill's course or Dean Graziosi or one of those guys where they're telling you to do wholesale to make 5 or 10 grand, I'm telling you that that's a whore's business and it's very hard. Now, I'm not saying you can't do it, but you're much better off to do slot deals and make 3, 5, or 10 grand because you're paying the asking price and you're not having to overcome that hurdle of doing that. Not only that, but instead of buying a wholesale deal and then coming and finding a guy like me that would have to buy for it, which is a needle in a haystack in itself. Now, when you buy this property, the whole population is your market. Mm-hmm. You're looking for the end user. You're not looking for that investor that has a pile of dough that can strike quickly. Yeah. It just changes the whole dynamic. Mm. Okay, so it's just a lot easier. Okay. All right, another one. We do this with pretty houses, not ugly houses. So, which we could do with ugly houses. That's another story. But so there isn't any repairs, rehabs, money, contracts, permits. You don't have all that aggravation and cost. It's gone.
Yep.
Because you do it with pretty houses. Yep. Another one is often these transactions are done within a 30-day period, which means quick dough. And you can do several per year, even if you did one at a time. Yeah. You do a rehab, it's 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Mm-hmm. Right? This you can get in and out. I mean, we've done them in as little as 2 or 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Right? Another benefit is if it can be done part-time if you want. Right? So you don't have to quit what makes you money now. Mm. You can get into it slowly and get it running until it's time for you to quit. So don't quit your job. Don't go out there and say, hey, I want to do real estate and I'm going to quit my job and fire your boss. I've had coaching clients do that. I had one coaching client that borrowed a bunch of money and then didn't do a deal. And now he's back. He's all scrambling around because he borrowed this money and it wasn't the right thing to do.
That's not the way to do business. You find something you can do, start making some money, and you grow. Not to grow slow, but you should be able to do it from where you stand right now without any big pie in the sky. There's got to be something that would work. And that's why you show this first, because you can do this.
That's right. All right. Another benefit is It is a fantastic way. And this, as far as I'm concerned, is the biggest benefit, but my listeners won't know this until it happens to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a fantastic way for you to practice doing deals. It will educate you on sellers, buyers, and give you a track record for a private lender once you advance into those type of deals. So right now you have no deals under your belt and you're looking to buy a house and you go to a private lender and they're like, well, this is my first deal. How are they going to feel? But suppose you went to your private lender and said to them, or even a family member that might have money, and you've proved yourself because you've done 5 or 10 of these other deals, you can say to your private lender, well, I've done 10 transactions.
Yep.
It builds credibility.
Oh, hell yeah.
Plus, it gives you the experience of going through an entire deal several times. Right?
Yeah, it's important.
I have bad news for everybody on this podcast. I do not consider you have even done a deal until you've done 5 or 10 deals. You have no idea what you're doing until you've done 5 or 10 deals.
Mm.
I don't believe that you're even considered close to being expert until you've done 50.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not that you can't do deals, but you can start predicting the future and seeing the indicators before they happen. You can start catching your problems way before they happen because you had the foresight and the practice to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this because I smoked cigars with Tabucky Jones. I don't even know what position he played for his team. He played for the Patriots. He was in the NFL for 10 years. He won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And this guy is so in tune with his body and his hamstrings and his joints and, you know, what to eat and all that kind of stuff, because it's his stamina to go on the field and practice. The amount of practice that these guys use, the amount of time they spend in the gyms, and the amount of time that they do scrimmages, it's amazing. The amount of time that they watch tapes from past football games and plays is absorbent. It's amazing. If most people knew how much these players put into the preparation of that game, their heads would spin.
Yeah.
But that's why he made all that money, and that's why he's a professional athlete.
Yeah, well, all professionals do that in any field, you know, arts, sports, and you're saying you got to kind of do the same in real estate, bit by bit.
Yeah,
that's why
you have to
you buy books. I bought a book yesterday. You can read a book. Here, honey, my wife. Here, read this, read that. You got to learn. You know.
You know, I wrote an email yesterday, Peter. I thought it was clever. It didn't have a good open rate, but I don't give a crap because I really meant what I said. What's the difference between intelligence and knowledge? Intelligence is you absorb something and you think about it and you have it in your head and it's like there, it's data. So you think. Yeah. It's theory.
Yep.
Knowledge is the application of it. Knowledge is the real world, like I did it and I observed this. So education to me, the best education in the world is observation, learning while you live.
Yeah.
Right? It's observation. So the best thing you can do is do it. So intelligence, yeah, okay, I could, you know, I talk about a driver's license, you know, it's like I could show you I could show you a car, I could help you study your exam and you can memorize all the questions and the answers and you could pass the test. You can have a driver's ed course, you can watch videos, hell, you can sit in the passenger side of my car and watch me drive until you slide your butt into the driver's seat and grab that steering wheel and feel the gas pedal under your foot and feel the brake under your foot and the swerve of the car when you turn and the motion, you don't have knowledge. You have intelligence until that happens. Yeah, you're intelligent about all the answers and how to drive and the signs and the, you know, the lines on the road and how many feet you should drive behind another car. You can have all that intelligence.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything until you apply it into knowledge. And
well, you mean like
yourself.
Hey, you mean like when you and I and Pam got our boating licenses and I still have driven a boat once? And I said, where's the boat so I can practice? Thanks, I have this little certificate, but I don't know how to do the boat. Like, give me a boat.
Right.
You know, same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyways, the last one, anyone could do this. Okay. Sellers and buyers have been doing this for years, mostly because the paperwork and the legal stuff is easy. I mean, I did my meetup last night, and I went right online, and all I did was I think we typed in Missouri. I forgot, Kansas City, Missouri, right? Because that's where somebody was from. And I typed into Google Kansas City, Missouri lease option agreement. And e-forms came up, which they always do. Now, that's not a very good form. My form's much better. You should separate them. This is all in one document. There's a few things about it. But here's the thing. It can do 1 or 2 or 3 deals to get you some dough in your pocket so you can go buy the right forms.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a big deal. I mean, it can get you started. So you don't have to worry about forms. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. What you have to worry about is how do you find the buyers? How do you find the sellers? And the sellers are the hardest one to find because buyers are easy to find if you post an ad. House for sale, no bank qualifying. Okay.
And that's the good news, because people worry about, geez, if I get this house, what if I can't unload it? And in this situation, it is harder to find the seller in that situation. But once you do, I've done it a few times, and then boy, people the phone rings off the hook. You'd be surprised. It's something that's really, really wanted, a house. Yeah.
And not to mention, so what if you can't find a buyer? You only risk $10, $50, $100. But think of the experience you get by doing that. That's putting yourself in the driver's seat, pushing your foot on the gas or on the brake pedal so you know how it feels. Right?
Yep.
All right, so we're on an hour, Peter. We got to get out of here. I apologize for going 15 minutes over today, but it was the beginning of this series. The next 6 podcasts won't be an hour because I'll buzz right through it. I won't have to go through all this stuff again. And I fully expect by the time we get to the series of 7 that anybody that wants to do creative real estate will have a good concept of what these 7 deal structures will do for them and how they benefit people. Okay. Don't forget to subscribe to however you're listening to us. If you go to the link in the description, there's actually a link there that will ask a few questions, a few survey questions, but it will get you an appointment with me one-on-one. I have been doing free 45-minute interviews. It's really like a triage. In medical, it's like when you go, no, seriously, when you go into the hospital, you go into a triage, and what they do is they examine you so they know what to do with you. Do you go to the emergency room? Do you go for an operation? Do you, so what happens is my 45-minute consultations is like a triage. Like, what are you doing with your real estate career? And I help you, like, you should do this, you should go here, you should go there. Sometimes it's my stuff, sometimes it's not. Sometimes I just tell people to go read a book, it's not about me trying to sell you anything. But anyways, that description is in your, that link is in the description of how you found this podcast. And don't forget that every single week, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday mornings, we record this and we live stream it to Facebook and to YouTube. Okay. With that said, we're over out. Have a good week. We'll talk about options next week, and you are going to be amazed at how I use these things in this economy. Is actually, it's invaluable to hear that information. All right. Have a good week. Over and out. Thanks for being